So my first area was called Uitkijk, and it was just kind of in the boonies in the middle of nowhere. And every morning I would wake up to this, like roaring sound. I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't really know what it was. And I always thought it was just maybe a factory kind of out in the middle of nowhere, or I don't know. I didn't really know what it was, but it turned out that it was howler monkeys. That every single morning I would wake up to these just monkeys just yelling at each other somewhere in the jungle, which was really kind of cool. So monkeys, I guess, were pretty common to see. You'd be riding your bike on the street and you just see them jumping through the trees, just a pack of them or one or two of them, which was really kind of cool. And there were a lot of anacondas. I remember one time we were riding up the street in my second area, Khorasan, and there was a 9-foot snake in this guy's front yard. Just huge. This thing was probably this big around. And they just shot it in the head and just threw it away. But like, these snakes were massive. You know, you see them on Discovery Channel, and then here they are slithering on the side of the road in Suriname. So, I mean, that's not uncommon to see. Thankfully, I didn't see them very often, and I never had to encounter one personally, but they were definitely there. Parrots are pretty cool. People have pet monkeys, and monkeys that are 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall. They're just they're kind of like baboons. They look like baboons, kind of like a mix between a baboon and a spider monkey. I don't really know what they were, but they were huge and scary, and I don't know, you always wanted to hold them and play with them, but they would bite you and scratch you, and they were way stronger than you, or they try to steal your bike and stuff. So those were kind of cool to see. Mosquitoes are terrible in Suriname too. That was a crappy part of the wildlife. They're big and they're never not around. I don't know if you could technically call them wildlife, but domestic dogs are terrible there. Avoid domestic dogs at all costs. Crazy food's definitely monkey. So there was a group of indigenous people, like the Amerindians of the country, and they ate some really bizarre things. So one I had curried baboon. I had like jungle pigs, jungle deer, kind of similar to what I guess you could consider that. I had like it was called an anyumara. It's like a giant fish that's probably about this big. It's similar to a piranha, like a predator fish with big teeth, and that was absolutely delicious. But I think by far monkey was the weirdest thing that I had. The tail was disgusting. In Suriname, there's a really big Indian influence. So I had a lot of curry, a lot of naan, a lot of things like that. My personal favorite was a dish called roti. So they basically make a curry with different meats. A lot of it's with chicken, vegetables, or pumpkin. And then they have kind of like a flat bread. Kind of the consistency of a tortilla, but a little bit thicker, and you tear the pieces of the roti bread apart, and then you kind of grab the meat or the vegetables with your hand that way, and that was always my favorite. One thing about Suriname, though, is they love spice. They love their peppers, almost to the point where you can't enjoy your food, you know, and it burns both ways. But you get to the point where you get used to it, and now food in America is sometimes kind of bland. You miss the spice, you miss the kick from the food there in Suriname. But other than that, it was kind of a typical South American diet. You had a lot of rice with a lot of meats, with a lot of chicken, a lot of beans. To be honest, I ate a lot of fried chicken. I ate a lot of grilled chicken. I ate a lot of chicken with whatever else they thought they could throw in there, which was great. There was also a big Javanese influence, so a lot of kind of Southeast Asia descendants from people from Southeast Asia. So we had a lot of Javanese food, which is a little bit different from typical Asian food. One of my favorite dishes from there was called sauto soup. It was like a chicken broth, but they would put rice and chicken and like grilled onion or dried onions and other vegetables in there, and kind of mix it all together and put a little bit of what they call pinda sambal, or kind of like a peanut sauce in it. And that was always fantastic. It was still my favorite. And one of my other favorite desserts, I guess you could say, was something called a bacabana. It's a deep fried plantain, and those were fantastic. Surinamese people they love English. They listen to hip hop radio. They listen to movies, television. That's what they learn the majority of their English. So people love speaking it, and for the most part, a lot of people can speak it, and they're generally pretty good. But they definitely have a Caribbean kind of accent. A lot of the English speakers that are in Suriname come from the country of Guyana, which is just one country to the west, and they have an entirely different dialect that you wouldn't be able to understand being a native English speaker if you were to go to their country. I guess to kind of give you an example, to say like, what's happening, or how's it going? They say, what happened by? And it's just like, how's it going? What happened? Like, what's going on? Or talk to the gal, or go up the streets. Like, they just have this really thick Caribbean accent. They just kind of mang all their words together. I mean, I didn't get much exposure to it, but I always love what happened by. Just what happened, what's happening, what's going on, which was kind of cool. But for the most part, yeah, most people could speak English. Most people had a pretty good grasp on the language. But a lot of people are really bashful to speak with a native English speaker. I guess just kind of like we're bashful to speak Dutch. They think they're going to make mistakes. They think that they're going to say things incorrect and that they're going to judge them or make fun of them or laugh at them. But I mean, it's pretty good. As far as do's and don'ts, to be honest, there really aren't any. Surinamese people are very straightforward. They're very forward with you. They are not bashful at all to tell you exactly what they feel, exactly when they feel it. So as far as, I guess, verbal do's and don'ts, there aren't very many. But cultural-wise, there are three major ethnic groups. There's a lot of Hindus from India and that region of the world. There's a lot of Javanese people from Southeast Asia, an African descent. So I meant three, I meant five groups. An African descent, there's surprisingly a lot of Chinese people in Suriname, which was very surprising to me. And then there's a large Amerindian or kind of native indigenous people there. And surprisingly, there's a lot of different religions. Islam is very prominent in Suriname. Hinduism is very prominent, and there's about every denomination of Christianity that's there. So it's interesting to see kind of this huge melting pot of culture, of religion, of geological or geographical background. And Surinamese people are very amazing or fascinating in a way that they make everything work. You know, they are constantly being mashed and manged with different people from different cultures, yet they all respect each other. They all have an understanding of each other. And there's very little hostility amongst ethnic groups, very little hostility amongst religious groups. And somehow they find ways to make it work. For an example, there was a Jewish synagogue and a Hindu temple on the same plot of ground, you know, and within the same walls. And they're perfectly fine with it, which is very interesting, but really kind of cool. There are over 10 languages spoken in Suriname, which is really interesting. For anybody that goes there, your main language is going to be Dutch, but there's also a language called Sranan Tongo, which is kind of a national street language, I guess you could say, that everybody speaks, and you'll pick that up as well just talking to people on the streets. But there's a huge Chinese population. Hindi is huge. Chinese is huge, and every different African village or African group has their own dialect, has their own different language that they speak. So it's kind of cool to see just how they've evolved and how are still able to communicate, even though, you know, they're so different and so diverse, which is kind of cool. Yes, and it's also kind of cool to see that the different religious groups, different cultural groups participate in each other's religious and cultural holidays. I remember one big one is called Pagwa. We celebrate it here as the Festival of Colors. It's like the big powder festival. So I think it's sometime in November, if I'm right, celebrated down there. I could be completely wrong, but everybody has pink and blue and yellow and green powders, and you are walking down the street and just get bombarded by kids just covered in powder everywhere. And so that's kind of cool to see. It's a nationwide holiday. Everybody participates in it, and for the most part, everybody loves it. New Year's is huge in Suriname. It's way better than it is in America. The city is just packed shoulder to shoulder with people. Fireworks are everywhere. I mean, even to the middle of the night, it sounds like there's a war zone in downtown Paramaribo, which is kind of cool. I feel like Surinamese people have a national holiday every other week. So there's always a free day where everybody's off school or everybody's relaxing at home. I feel like the majority of them are self-made, but I guess we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But for the most part, those are probably the two most memorable holidays in Suriname: Pagwa with the powder, and then just the grandeur of New Year's Eve. Housing, Suriname is a very interesting country. I would say a lot like most third world countries. There's a very poor part of the country, and there's a very wealthy, affluent part of the country. I've seen families that have 8 to 10 to 12 people living in a house that's maybe the size of an average American bedroom. Where I've seen, you know, other families that live in this inner city that have, you know, a house 3 times as large as what they actually need to meet their needs. So I mean, there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of hardship. There's a lot of heartache, and then there's a lot of situations that you come across that are difficult to see and difficult to take in. You know, kids on the street just wandering aimlessly, you know, people not having enough food to eat, people not having enough money to provide for their families. It's just tough. All the houses in Suriname have tin roofs, which is kind of cool when it rains, because it's in the Amazon jungle, so it pours all the time. So it's kind of cool. That's a good, I guess, audio. When it rains, just everything's pounding on those tin roofs, which is kind of cool. But you have air conditioning, running water, a washing machine. You can drink the water out of the taps. Like, you have no problems that way. The weather is, I don't know how to phrase it, pretty miserable on the hot spectrum. So it's roughly, I would say, 90 to 95 degrees during the summer, but 100% humidity. And in the winter, it drops down to maybe 85. During the rainy season, 85, 80. But it's still 100% humidity. So you're never not sweating. You're never not moist or damp or wet in some sense of the word. I mean, you get out of the shower, you dry yourself off, and you're instantly sweating. You're in bed with the airco on, and you walk outside and you instantly start to sweat. But I mean, you get used to it and you acclimate, and I've heard it's good for your skin. As far as weather goes as well, it rains almost every single day, and it'll rain like you've never ever experienced here in America. Rain's so thick that you can literally see the wave of rain coming up the street. You can physically see it like advancing towards you, which is kind of cool. And it just pours. The drops are huge, and it will rain for hours. And then just the streets become rivers, and there's huge puddles, and I don't know, that on the side of the roads they have like these gutter systems, and they just overflow with water. Like it's amazing. I remember one night my buddy and I, or my companion and I, were preparing to teach a lesson, and it's just started to pour. So we waited out a little bit in our apartment. When we came outside, there was like 4 inches of water in our yard. And I mean, you just bike on through it. So that's kind of cool. A lot of the work that people do, or at least a lot of people that I associated with, I served 3/4 of my mission in the southern part of the country, so more kind of in the rural part of Suriname. A lot of it was just physical labor. I'd be building houses, farming, building boats, working in fields, like harvesting fruit. A lot of it was just hard physical labor. And they use a machete for everything. But in the city, you have there's a lot of school teachers, a lot of businessmen. A lot of people own like little shops, clothing shops, food shops, things like that. But I feel like the majority of people that I personally knew just worked really, really hard every single day to provide for their families. A lot of it was just hard construction work. In Suriname, the crime isn't too bad. I can't think of a time of mission where I felt unsafe, where I felt like I was in danger, or that I was going to be harmed by anybody. There definitely are some places to avoid at night, but I mean, I can't say that I ever felt in danger or in harm, or that I was going to be, hurt in any way. I feel like for the most part, it's a pretty safe country that you're free to go where you want to go. It's funny, Surinamese people, they love to be, I guess, up to date with pop culture. They love to be like the Americans, but at the same time, they're always 3 or 4 steps behind. So when I was there, I'm assuming the iPhone 4, the iPhone 5 came out, and then that was the big thing in America, but Suriname was still stuck in like the BlackBerry phase, which is kind of interesting to see. But shopping, yeah, I would say is pretty similar there as it is here. You can buy almost anything that you want that you can get in America there. They have a lot of like Armani stores, like basically any store that you could want, they have it there. And everybody's all about fashion and style and the newest trends, but at the same time it's kind of funny, everybody dresses the exact same. It's all about snapbacks, skinny jeans, and designer t-shirts, and they all think they're being original and put their new spin on it, but everybody dresses the exact same, which is kind of funny. It's very Caribbean in the sense that nothing's on time. If you say be there 8 o'clock, you really mean 8:30 or 9. So if you want people to be there at 8 o'clock, you better tell them 7 or 6:30. Everybody kind of moves at their own pace. There's no rush to do anything. There's no hurry. There's no pressure. There's no time schedule. It kind of just happens when it happens. You'll see people building a house for a year and a half. There were some buildings that I never saw completed in the 2 years that I served in the country. So people are just really very Caribbean. Very relaxed, very take it easy, very kind of slow and easy. But they're just really kind people. They always want to welcome you in. They'll always give you a Coke or something to drink, or a glass of cold water on the hot day, which is really cool for the most part. Yeah, that's about it. And they're hard workers on their own time. Most people speak Dutch. It's the national language, so I would say 85-90% of the population was able to speak it. However, the farther away you get from the capital, the less prevalent it is. That's when you're going to find more of the Serangan Tongo, more of the native Aboriginal languages, or Amerindian languages, more of the native tribal languages. But for the most part, everybody's able to speak it. On what level or to what capacity ranges on their level of education. So I actually had the chance to visit Holland after I got home from my mission. And we also had several Dutch elders and a Dutch senior couple that served with us. And there's really not very much difference in the language. The accent is really, really different. I can't really do it because I don't have a Dutch accent. But one of the big accent differences is in Dutch, W's are V's. So you could say wij zijn dankbaar, like we are thankful, wij zijn. But in Suriname, the V's are still W's. So they'd say wij zijn dankbaar. But for the most part, it's not too different between the two countries, and most people speak it just fine. I would say Dutch was hard for me because it's similar enough to English to kind of understand it, but yet it's different enough to make it difficult. Grammar is generally set up where you have the subject at the very beginning of the sentence, a verb, everything else that's in your sentence, and then a verb at the end. And then if you have multiple verbs in your sentence, like all of them are kind of grouped at the end, which is kind of interesting. And it was kind of difficult to learn. For the most part, people are amazed that you can speak so much as you can, or they're excited that you're willing to learn their language. They're really helpful. They're really kind. They're understanding. They're patient, and they're willing to work with you. So just don't be afraid to just talk. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to sound a little bit like a fool and be corrected. And you'll learn it quick. Okay. Hoe gaat het met jullie? Het is echt een bijzondere gelegenheid die ik heb om jullie toe te spreken. Ik had het niet verwacht. En om eerlijk te zijn, ik weet niet wat ik precies moet zeggen. Het voelt zo vreemd aan dat ik al bijna 1,5 jaar terug op mijn zending ben. De tijd is zo snel voorbij gegaan. Maar ik wil jullie allemaal zeggen dat ik hou zoveel van jullie. Die 2 jaar dat ik heb jullie mogen dienen waren de beste 2 jaren van mijn leven. Ik kan het niet verwoorden. Ik kan de woorden niet vinden, niet gebruiken om mijn dankbaarheid uit te spreken. Ik ben nooit zo dankbaar voor de mensen die jullie zijn. Voor de liefde die jullie mij getoond hebben en voor de vriendschappen die wij ontwikkeld hebben. Ik wil jullie alvast bedanken voor de ondersteuning, voor de hulp en voor de ervaringen die wij samen hebben meegemaakt. Ik wil jullie ontmoedigen om standvastig te blijven. Ik weet dat het evangelie een moeilijke weg is. Het is vol van moeilijkheden en tegenslagen en teleurstellingen. Maar ik weet dat het is de smalle en enge weg. De pad die leidt ons terug naar God. Die ons geluk en rust en vrede in het leven kan brengen. Hou vast aan uw getuigenis. Vergeet nooit de gevoelens die u gevoeld heeft toen u voor het eerst het evangelie tegen waren gekomen. Hou altijd vast aan die gevoelens die u tot bekering hebben gebracht. Omdat in uw donkerste uren zult u geluk en rust in die momenten kunnen vinden. Ik hou van jullie en ik hoop dat ik jullie snel terug kan zien. Nogmaals, ik hou van jullie.